Now, I've tried countless times before in the past to learn how to properly code. And when I mean properly code, what I mean is to understand the language, from its foundations and from the ground up, to understand what tools it offers and how those tools can be used to solve problems. But I've never managed to quite stick with it. And I think this is for a number of reasons. The first being, I just had other work going on. I had to reprioritize. It kind of took a bit of a back burner and then I just never came back to it. Or another new shiny thing came along, which was maybe a bit more prevalent in my work at the time. And so I kind of left the coding behind. But I think the biggest one is that I just had no accountability. I had no one to report into in terms of delivering a project. I had no deliverable, and I had no reason to learn how to code. But those things are all kind of currently changing now. So once again, I am going to learn how to code, but this time I'm going to be doing things a little bit differently. This time I've got an actual reason. I've got a driver as to why I want to learn how to code. And the first one is because my job requires it. More and more, I'm starting to do more demos and things like that. And yes, I can build all these things out in the AWS Management Console. But there's a couple of problems with this. One, I can't just leave those things running. It incurs costs and it's not a very frugal use of resources and money. Two, it's not repeatable. If I tear that down, and I want to do that demo again, I need to rebuild the whole thing from scratch. And so my first choice of language that I'm going to be learning is something called Terraform. Terraform is a product which is developed and built by a company called HashiCorp. And what Terraform allows you to do, or what it does, is something called infrastructure as code. And infrastructure as code allows you to define components within your cloud landscape, so servers, databases, networking components, as code, as lines of code. And this means you can save that code, and whenever you need to rebuild that thing again, you go ahead and redeploy it. AWS does have its own infrastructure as code service called CloudFormation, which is natively integrated with a lot of the other AWS services, but I have used Terraform in the past, so I do have some experience on it, and that's why I'm just going to try and leverage and capitalize on that and continue learning Terraform instead. In order to take this a step further, I'm going to continue my learning with Python. I'm pretty sure everyone has probably heard of what Python is. Python is a very, very common programming language. It's incredibly flexible, and the best thing about it is it's great for beginners. The syntax, the way it's written, is very readable, and so it's easy to understand. So I'm going to be doing a lot more work with things like containers and serverless, and so I want to be building applications on top of those services. And so my current choice of programming language is going to be Python, purely because I've done some work with it before. That's not to say there are not other languages out there. There are so many, there's plenty. There's Java, there's JavaScript, there's Rust, there's Go, there's plenty of other languages out there. I just have exposure to Python in the past, so again, I'm going to be leveraging on that. And finally, in terms of my accountability partner, well, this channel is my accountability partner. I'm going to be uploading a series of vlogs every now and then. I don't have a set schedule because I'm kind of learning to code in my own time and after work and before work and those types of things. So I'm going to be uploading videos here and then, kind of documenting my progress, documenting what I've been learning and what I've been doing, and importantly, the challenges I've been having. The best way to learn is to get stuck in, for things to break, for things not to work, and for you to go ahead and try and fix them. And that's exactly what I expect to happen and what I'll be doing. So I've already spent some time kind of getting the basic setup already on my machine. So the things I've been kind of doing is just kind of downloading VS Code. I've installed, well, I had VS Code already. I had Git installed already. Created a GitHub account. I've reinstalled the Terraform CLI. I had Python already, and I already also had Homebrew. So I've just kind of been setting those things up. to help me get started with my development journey. So if you don't know what those things are, then don't worry, I'm going to explain them to you now. So first things first, Homebrew. What is Homebrew? Now, if you've used Linux or a Linux distribution, you will be familiar with a package manager. So this could be Yum, this could be apt. So there's many different package managers out there. And what it means is you can go ahead and request a piece of software or a package from this repository and install it on your machine. Now, if you're using Mac, Mac doesn't have a package manager. And so Homebrew was created to fill that gap. And effectively, Homebrew allows you to install, manage, and uninstall packages or software on your Mac without having to go ahead and actively go to the website, download the file, run the file, install it, and then kind of keep tabs on what versions you have and if you need to uninstall it and install it, etc. So Homebrew does all of that for you. And it's really simple to install on your Mac, and I recommend you get it. So next up is VS Code, and I'll be using VS Code in order to write and edit all of my code. It's a very lightweight program. It's got a nice, simple UI. It's easy to use, and it's also got a terminal built in, so you can just run terminal commands without having to swap applications. And also you can install a number of extensions from all of the big kind of other tech third parties out there and providers in order to make your development experience that much better. So next is Git and GitHub. I'm going to be working alone doing my development, but when you go ahead and you develop with other people, things like version control, ensuring you don't have clashes in your code, etc., that needs to be managed. And so there was a source control mechanism called Git created by the same person who created the Linux kernel. And so what Git allows you to do is to make sure that if you're working with a number of different developers, you can manage the versions, you can manage who's able to make changes to the code, you can do approval processes, etc. And it's really useful. It's a great tool to get to know. GitHub is an online repository where it's not kind of stored on your own servers. It's stored within the cloud. It's an online repository where you can store all your code. You can collaborate with other developers in your team, and then you can push this out as part of a development pipeline. And finally is the Terraform CLI. So the Terraform CLI allows you to do infrastructure as code builds. So what it's going to do is it's going to help you initialize a infrastructure as code project. You're going to be able to connect to your AWS account and also deploy infrastructure and keep an eye on the state of your deployment. So that's where I am currently. I'm currently doing some practice builds on Terraform. I found a really good course on YouTube by Freed Code Camp that I'm following, and just to kind of get my knowledge back again in terms of best practices, how to use the Terraform CLI, the Terraform syntax, how to integrate it all with my AWS account, etc. So that's what I'm currently learning. On the side, I'm doing a few different kind of small projects with Python. And so, just kind of getting hands-on, familiar with the Python syntax and the various different components. And so hopefully in a week or two, I'll have some cool things to show you in my next episode of Coding Diaries. So I hope this video series will inspire you in your coding journey as well. Remember, it's never too late to learn something new. It's never too late to learn how to code. And please let me know how you're getting along and what your journey is in the comments below. Let me know what you're working on and the resources you're using and the tools you're using. And also, if you have any tips, please do share in the comments. I'll be more than happy to have a read through them. In the meantime, check out some of my other videos around AWS, around careers at AWS, and around productivity in general. And if you find them helpful, please consider liking and subscribing.